So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution. New workplace violence law is coming to California, and we've got to talk about it. This law is going into effect July 1st, 2024. It was signed back in September of 2023. Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law Senate Bill number 553, SB 553, which requires virtually every California employer to take steps to prevent or respond to workplace violence. And a little bit of housekeeping is required before we get to talk about this. In the middle of last year, the bill had language prohibiting retailers from confronting any suspected shoplifter. Then later, they added amendments for dedicated safety personnel, but ultimately was amended in late August with Cal OSHA, the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health, and they eventually took that language out where the California chamber is now neutral, which drew their opposition, which initially stopped retailers from prohibiting suspected shoplifters. Now that that's out of the way, we do need to talk about what it does do. It requires all employers to maintain a violent incident log of all violent incidents against employees, as well as post-incident investigations. In addition, employee representatives can be petitioners for temporary workplace violence restraining orders, specifically collective bargaining agreements. Union leaders can be petitioners for workplace violence restraining orders. In addition, staff need to know how to obtain help from law enforcement to respond to workplace violence or emergencies. From this, also identify those responsible for implementing the plan, including roles, trainings, and protocols for assessing and reacting to threats of workplace violence. In addition, employers have to explain to employees how to report violent incidents without fear of retaliation and how their concerns will be addressed. Finally, they have to give out procedures for violent emergencies, like including alerts about emergencies, feasible evacuation or sheltering plans, and obtaining assistance from staff, security, or law enforcement. So, that's what this bill will do. It'll put more regulatory requirements on employers who decide to act in California as a whole, up to including a violent incident log, which is very important, I think, to a degree. But what I find most frustrating about this is that it appears to put the onus on the business when ultimately this is a police issue. When there are violent incidents in the workplace, the police should respond. The business or the employees who are affected by the violence should respond by calling the police. I don't see any difference between this and any other place of any kind where people are gathered. Should, for example, a stadium have a violent incident log? Well, maybe, but they just call the police when something like that happens. And so I don't really, and I also don't know why specifically against employees. Perhaps there's a world in which the business, has violence against to customers. Is that also important? I don't understand exactly what the value is in making it workplace specific. The other thing is that it really does, double duty. This is the actions of OSHA for the most part, right? If you have an injury that occurs in the workplace as a result of workplace violence, it possibly could be put on the OSHA 300 log, and depending on whether or not it's recordable and everything else. And so there are a whole world of situations in which these are mostly covered by federal law, but because it requires threats to be added to the violent incident log, it ultimately adds requirements on the California employer to be able to understand these threats and then address them appropriately. I can ultimately see this getting out of hand, although in some ways I agree with it. Teachers who see violence in the school could, ultimately get restraining orders, or union leaders could ultimately get restraining orders against children who go to that school. And to be quite honest, that sounds like a good idea. Unfortunately, there's too much violence in the schools. But that is a situation in which there may be a OSHA situation. Finally, I'm a little bit surprised that this is a problem that should be addressed in this manner. Is workplace violence in California such that something like this needs to exist? I think about my time in many manufacturing and industrial facilities, and very rarely did I ever see workplace violence, even when we had 600 to 1,000 employees all working together. And so it really calls into question what exactly is happening in California and the employers that operate there, because employers, generally speaking, want to see their employees be safe. They want to see their employees be successful. And so I don't see a world where something to this degree is needed. We just don't have these problems. Clearly, California legislators have seen otherwise. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Was this important? Was this necessary for your workplace? Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.